Why do people commit violent acts? That's a question that we as Americans always ask once they're committed. Where do we go to find these answers that we so much need? We go to social media outlets. These social media outlet experts, they give us the answers that we're needing so they can fulfill us, and they give it to us fast. Who do they place the blame on? Well, they used to place the blame on music, movies, and television, and they still do sometimes, but the blame's been placed in particular on one thing. That thing is video games. So are the experts right? Are video games responsible for violence in America? Absolutely not. Today I'm going to prove this to you. I'm going to do this by telling you who plays video games and why they play video games. I'm going to tell you some instances that have been blamed on video games. And finally, I'm going to finish up with why video games are blamed and who should be blamed if video games are not responsible. Let's begin with why people play video games. People play video games because they want to escape reality. It's entertaining. They're fun. People just want to come home, they want to turn on their game system and play a sports game, a fantasy game, and live in somebody else's shoes for a little bit, then turn it off and go back to reality. That's the whole thing. It's make-believe. It's fiction. According to the Electronic Software Association of America, in their 2012 Gamers Fact Sheet, found on ESA.com, 50% of American households have a video game console in them. Question to you is, are 50% of Americans violent? No, they're not. Another interesting statistic that the fact sheet shows is that 53% of American gamers are male, 47% of American gamers are female. Here's another thing I've noticed. I've never once turned on the news and saw an act of violence that's been committed by a female that's been blamed on video games. But yet, 47% of Americans that play video games are female. So should we hear more? Yes, we should, if games do, in fact, cause violent events. Now that I've given you why people play video games and I've told you some statistics about who plays video games, let's take a look at instances that have been blamed on video games. First instance I'm going to talk about is the 2007 Virginia Tech massacre. This massacre was tragic, and it caused people not to want to go to college for a while. But it was blamed on video games almost immediately. According to the Washington Post, an article titled Dr. Phil and Jack Thompson Blame Video Games for the Virginia Tech Shooting, Dr. Phil McGraw, a famous television host, blamed video games for the shooting before he even knew who the shooter was. How can you do that? Don't you have to look at who the shooter is before you blame it on anything? Yes, you do. But he was quick to blame video games because it's easy to do. We're going to get into that a little bit more later. The second incident I'm going to talk to you about is the incident that just happened earlier on this year in Aurora, Colorado, in the movie theater of the Batman screening. According to TechDirt.com, in an article titled "The Press Speculates That the Batman Shooter Played Video Games," and guess what? They're right. It states that immediately the press speculated that the shooter, James Egan Holmes, did play video games, and he was influenced by video games to do the shooting. Well, the article further stated that they questioned some of his classmates and some of his neighbors, and they said yes, while he was playing video games a lot, he only played a few. One was Mario and Wii. Two was he loved Guitar Hero. I'm sorry, but Guitar Hero does not cause violence by anyone. It might cause you to curse at the screen a little bit, but it does not cause violence. I don't know if anybody who's wants to commit violence after playing Guitar Hero. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Another thing to mention about these two incidents is these two were social outcasts. So that's something to think about. Well, for our next subject that we're going to do. Now we've covered that why some incidents of video games, some incidents that have been blamed on video games. We're going to cover why video games are blamed and who they should be blamed if video games are not responsible. So why are video games blamed? Well, like I said, people want to blame it fast because it's easy. Some video games are violent. So they want to blame it fast. We need answers as a society, so they blame it. Video games, music, television. Lately, like I said, they've been blaming video games. But if video games aren't to blame, who can we blame? The parents? Society? Bullying? Well, in an article written by Paul Tassi at Forbes.com titled The Idiocy of Blaming Video Games for the Norway Massacre, he states, no one should be blamed. I think he has a point. No one should be blamed. The mind's a weird thing. It's big. Who knows who influences it? And there's no facts that can base that video games are responsible for causing violent tendencies. So no one should be blamed, except maybe the person themselves. But mental illness and stuff, but no one or nothing should be blamed. So today I went through why people play video games and who plays video games. I've showed you some incidents that have been blamed for video games, and I've showed you why video games are blamed and who should be blamed. I'm going to finish it out with this one question. If America decides that video games are to blame, and they banned video game sales in America and around the world, would violence stop? Just think about it.